Thomas Hobbes. Good morn. How are you, my dear friend?
How do you do, old friend? Shall we begin?
We shall. Let's start with your philosophy of law.
I strongly believe that laws are necessary in order to avoid war. They are crucial for the possibility and the method in which humans can live together in peace and avoid danger and the fear of civil conflict. If we don't obey an unaccountable sovereign, an authority totally unaccountable to its subjects, then society will end up in a state of nature, similar to a situation of a civil war. No one is secure and everyone must fear death.
How do you feel about natural law and social conduct?
I believe that we must strive to avoid a state of nature. It should be our obligation to avoid it, and we should strive for a world that is peaceful. However, if we cannot do such by using peaceful means, it is acceptable to use the means of war. In my opinion, the only way natural law can prevail is for men to submit to the commands of the sovereign, because the ultimate source of law now comes from the sovereign, and the sovereign's decisions need not be grounded in morality. Legal positivism is born.
And how do you feel in regards to positive law? I have concluded that the state of nature is nothing more than a state of perpetual war, and man is a violent creature. Thus, as positive law is the belief that law is established by the state, for the benefit of the state as a whole, having no moral purpose other than to ensure the survival of the state and its citizens, I am a positive theorist. What are your thoughts on the natural condition of mankind?
Political authority is not a natural concept. Adults are not any weaker than one another. Thus, it is not natural for them to be authoritative over one another. Without authority, we would compete violently to attain the necessities and the other material gains. We would want to gain glory, thus challenging others and fighting without fear.
Could you please explain some of your other philosophies in regards to law?
Of course. Well, I believe that human judgment is not reliable, requiring the guidance of science. This is due to the fact that one's judgment is distorted by self-interest. Thus, the only reliable knowledge is the knowledge of consequences. I also consider humans as so interested in survival that they are willing to give up their rights to the king if it means attaining self-preservation. People cannot expect happiness living together. However, they can live at peace under authority.
What are your thoughts on civil disobedience?
Well, of course, I discourage civil disobedience, as I believe that the government's rules should be absolute and no one should question or oppose it. An individual or the entire society might suffer because of the greed or incompetence of their ruler, but I believe that it is far better to have unfair authoritarian government than to have chaos and civil war. A person with great authority should hold the power, not a democratic government. I believe you could switch your allegiance only if the sovereign was no longer able to maintain order over society. The welfare of people or their right to democratic expression isn't at the top of my priority list.
How would you define the concept of justice?
I like to think that I have changed the idea of justice. No longer does it have to do with the virtue or righteousness of the ruler, but it has to do with a contract that citizens work out among themselves to give up certain rights to the ruler. I would also argue that the ruler's power makes the citizens comply with the contract. That being the case, justice is a product of coercive power, and contracts are validated by the ruler's power, not by the ruler's virtue or righteousness. In order to gain lasting preservation, people must create a stable society, and to do so, must give up their right of nature, thus giving up their right to decide what is best for each individual. I would further argue that letting such be decided by a sovereign is the best way to guarantee preservation. My sense of justice would most likely result in a form of dictatorship.